Hi, and welcome to Faxon blog and podcast.
Now in February or March or April, if they're talking about banning assault weapons, guess what? They are talking about your Glock 17.
Yeah.
They are talking about your Springfield Armory XDM. They are talking about your SIG P320.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, I mean, like, well, I wouldn't own one of those assault weapons. Guess what? You do.
Yeah. You know, I think most people know your dad. A lot of people know Tom from the Gun Talk radio show. But, you know, how long ago did Gun Talk actually get started, and what was that like?
I guess people know my dad's Tom Gresham. He's the host of Gun Talk Radio. But it really started before that. It started because I'm third generation this, and my grandfather, Grits Gresham, was an outdoor writer, gun writer, if you will. But he wrote for Sports Afield magazine and a lot of different hunting and gun magazines as well. And really became well known because he did a bunch of stuff on TV. He did the American Sportsman on ABC back when there were only 3 networks.
Yeah.
So basically the 3 networks were just splitting the audience. You had a third of the United States watching at any given time.
This week's segment is brought to you by our friends at Crimson Trace. We're going to be giving away one of the CMR 204s, the Railmaster Pro Light and Laser.
But what in the world is this? Come on now.
Jay's custom board.
Where's mine?
We could get one. Amazon has wonderful things. That's where I got that bad boy.
This looks like more like
it looks like a
paddle from those
like a
of us.
sorority or a fraternity paddle. That's what it looks like for me.
Are you kidding
Did you ever
me?
see this?
It looks like the stuff that our parents spanked us with in the 70s.
So you've heard it a million times before on tons of different forums and blogs and safety tips and tutorials that a clean gun is a safe gun. And that's one of the reasons why we think you should look into our friends over at Tipton. Now, you'll see some of their stuff popping up in our podcast in the coming weeks because we're going to be doing some cleaning episodes. How do you clean a pistol? How do you clean an AR? What are the types of things that you need to safety check on those items? And you'll see a lot of Tipton products coming up in those episodes as well. What I have with me right now is their Tipton gun cleaning kit for pistols. This has really everything you need to get started with keeping up with your pistol, whether it's your EDC or your range gun or your competition gun. It really is an easy to store, take with you, throw in your bag, and making sure that you are keeping up with all of the needs of your firearm. So obviously everything down from patches and brushes and rods, it's all right here, ready to go. But Tipton has tons of other stuff, including vices, solvents, and all the things you need to keep your guns safe. So make sure you check out our friends Tipton and check them out on the podcast as well. Hi, and welcome to episode 42 of the Faxon blog and podcast. We have a great episode for you today. Our friend Ryan Gresham from Gun Talk Media is on with us. And if you have not met Ryan before, you've probably heard of his dad, Tom, and his grandfather, Grits. They have been in the firearms media industry for decades, and we're excited to have them on. Ryan's going to be talking with me a little bit about how Gun Talk got started, how the radio show got started, how they're now on over 200 different radio stations, as well as the podcast and all of their other media brands, including Guns and Gear, First Person Defender, and so on. So make sure you stick around for that, because we're also going to be talking a little bit about what he thinks the current climate for the firearms community is looking like. Obviously, they've been around for decades. They've been around for many different presidential elections, many different pieces of legislation that impact the 2A community. So they've been here before, and they've also not been here before. We understand that this is a new time for all of us, but they definitely have a wealth of knowledge to fall back on and to give insight from. Don't forget that we are in the middle of our Sportsman hunting giveaway. So if you are interested in hunting, or you want to fill out your locker for some outdoor shooting sports, you don't want to miss this giveaway. It is being highlighted by a custom 350 Legend rifle from us here at Faxon. That was done by Tom at One Off Coating in Dayton in a special multicam, as well as a Thompson Center muzzle loader. We have prizes from Scentlock, Rocky Boots, Crimson Trace, Hornady, Bison Coolers, tons of other great brands. It's been probably the biggest giveaway we've had year to date so far. Don't forget to enter for that. You can find all the ways to enter at FaxonFirearms.com. And there's, again, tons of different ways to get entries in, and just a few days are left. So make sure you get in for your daily entries. Also this week, filling in for Jay, we have Britt Faxon back on the show, and we're going to be giving a little teaser to our Thanksgiving special. We already talked to you a little bit about the fact that we're showing you how to make homemade Cincinnati Ghetto with Jay, and Britt also hopped in for the Thanksgiving special to help make a Faxon family favorite of chess pie. So we'll be showing that segment from our upcoming Thanksgiving special episode that will be airing next week. So we're looking forward to having Britt on with us. And that segment this week is brought to you by our friends at Crimson Trace. We're going to be giving away a CMR 204 Railmaster Pro. So if you're interested in winning the CMR 204, just stick around for the Jay's World of Eats segment with Britt and the Chess Pie, and you'll find all of the ways to enter. Before we go any further, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our friends of the podcast, and then we'll hop into our conversation with Ryan of Gun Talk Media. You know, it's no secret that the things that you keep in your gun safe are important. They're valuable. They're things that you want, you need to hold on to, whether it's just your firearms and supplies, or I know a lot of people like to use their gun safes to hold things like tax returns and other important documents, family photos. All of those things are incredibly important. And to help keep better track of it and better maintenance on those items, Lockdown has a series of devices and utilities and tools to help keep those things that you treasure safe. One of my personal favorites that we actually use here in the office quite a bit around our storage for cameras and lighting and things like that is just one of their dehumidifiers. Now they have lots of other stuff. You may have already heard of the Goldenrod. You've heard a lot of stuff about the Lockdown Puck, which is a smart device to help keep your gun drawer, your safe, your tools, even your wine cellar safe, and checking up on the humidity and the atmosphere in those places as well. We did a great episode with Lockdown several weeks back that you could check out at faxonfirearms.com/blog, where we go through pretty much their entire product line and everything from the Lockdown Puck to dehumidifiers to even things like, storage, rack shelving, things of that variety. Keeping your safe, keeping your gun room clean, organized, and protected. And you could even get something like this, one of their room or gun safe dehumidifiers. If you're looking to organize that space in your home, again, whether it's for your gun safe or just anything that you hold valuable, we'd recommend you go to lockdown.com. Well, as promised, today we have a very special guest. Ryan from Gun Talk is on. You may know of Gun Talk from either the radio show or the multiple podcasts, or even just guntalk.com with all the information, the articles, all the resources that they keep up to date on day after day, week after week, year after year. And Ryan, I have to say, I'm really excited to have you on because Gun Talk has been in this firearms media game long before social media was a thing, long before podcasts were a thing. So I have to say it's a real great pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me on. This is fun. Yeah, we've been at it a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I think most people know your dad. A lot of people know Tom from the Gun Talk radio show. But, how long ago did Gun Talk actually get started, and what was that like, in those early days? How do you get the ball rolling on something like this?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess people know my dad's Tom Gresham. He's the host of Gun Talk Radio, but it really started before that. It started because I'm third generation this, and my grandfather, Grits Gresham, was an outdoor writer, gun writer, if you will. But he wrote for Sports Afield magazine and a lot of different hunting and gun magazines as well. And really became well known because he did a bunch of stuff on TV. He did the American Sportsman on ABC back when there were only 3 networks.
Yeah.
So basically the three networks were just splitting the audience. You had a third of the United States watching at any given time. And so he did that, took Terry Bradshaw and Burt Reynolds and Bing Crosby and people like that, hunting and fishing and shooting. Wow. And then he did the Miller Lite commercials, the Taste Great Less Filling commercials for, I think, about 12, 13 years. We always like to joke, he wrote thousands of articles and did all these things, but he's just known as the beer guy.
Yeah, it's whatever sticks in people's brains on that last little tip. That's super fascinating. Also, first of all, your grandfather has a great name. By the way, what a perfect name for a. Yeah, I mean,
there's a story there. His dad was a semi-pro baseball player, and so it came from a nickname that evolved and it kind of stuck. His real name wasn't Grits, but I think, most of his mail he got at his house was addressed to Grits Gresham.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so does that just mean, apples fall from the tree and it was kind of in the stars that this was something that you wanted to be a part of as well?
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in it. Yeah. I grew up hunting. I grew up shooting. I grew up going on photo shoots for magazines and doing those types of things. But I didn't really think I was going to do this because people would say to me, "Are you going to be a writer like your dad?" And at the time, I didn't really consider myself a writer. And I knew that outdoor writers didn't make very much money. Yeah. So I was kind of like, I don't know if that's not really my path, even though I like shooting and hunting and all those things. But of course, when they said, "Are you going to be a writer?" that was before we had YouTube and the internet and podcasts and all these other things. And I did go into media and do that outside of the gun industry for a long time. And then started doing this as Gun Talk, as people know it today. You asked kind of how long has it been around and how did that get started? Gun Talk Radio started 25 years ago. Started on, I think, 3 or 4 radio stations as syndicated talk radio show. And today it's on 250, 260 radio stations each week. We have the podcast that is a pretty well listened to podcast as far as the Gun Talk Network. We keep adding stuff to it. So I joined up about 12 years ago, kind of my background in media and advertising sales and what I was doing prior to this. And we grew up from there. So the goal for us is trying to reach those 90 million gun owners out there. We don't attempt to be super niche on a particular thing. Right. And we don't claim to be experts of all things. We're big enthusiasts and been around a long time and know some stuff, but that's kind of the goal. And our ultimate, sneaky goal is our stated goal here internally is making gun ownership unremarkable. Right. Because even 12 years ago when I started working with my dad, I would hesitate when people would ask me what I did. Yeah. And it's like, "What do you do?" And you're like, I do media." Right. Or whatever. Yes. And I think a lot of us in this gun industry have done that. Right. And then I'm probably about a year in, I was like, "This is stupid. I'm just telling people what I do." And I don't think I've gotten a single negative reaction over the years. Yeah. That's funny that you mentioned that because I've been with Faxon for actually this week was 1 year for me. And, so we moved down here. You kind of get set up, you start getting to know your neighbors and things. And, just recently a trick or treat, we're all out with our kids. And one of my neighbors goes, "Now, my wife said you work for the city or something." And I was like, something like that, kind of, and it is, it's because you don't know kind of what social agenda is going on there. And it does make you nervous and things. But yeah, I agree, to make the whole gun ownership thing unremarkable. Like what I like to say here is when we do the show is kind of pull back some of the mystique. Our very first show was about who is a gun owner and looking not only at stereotypes, but also looking at just what the data says. The data will tell you that it's way more than what general popular media tells you is the typical gun owner. And I think we've seen that come to fruition this year in a very big way. Big time. Yeah. And what I discovered when I stopped I don't know, sugarcoating it or whatever of what I do is, and that's what I mentioned. I mean, I've had so many positive interactions with people over the years of just saying, yeah, we do gun talk, we cover guns, shooting, hunting, all that type of stuff. And I mean, I've had Southwest Airlines like customer service phone people, and gun talk and she goes, like the radio show.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a woman on the phone, and I think she was in Texas. She goes, oh, I listen to that show all the time. I was like, really? Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And she goes, we gotta keep our guns. We gotta keep our gun rights.
Yeah.
And she goes, they're recording this call, but I don't even care if I get in trouble. I love what y'all do.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. Well, that is something, Ryan, that I was really hoping we could dive into today in general, being the fact that this has been a generational thing for your family and seeing firearms in American life in general over these decades, but also being in firearms media for these decades, multiple presidents, multiple batches of gun legislation. The radio show started at the height of the assault weapons ban. Now we're coming into 2021 after an unprecedented year in firearms sales. The estimate is 6.5 million new gun owners this year in the United States. And, even though there were a lot of gray areas when it comes to the election proper, if we're looking at Joe Biden as president-elect, and if we take a look at some of the things that were on his official campaign website as far as, gun control and things are considered, you guys have to collect from so many different media outlets, and you have so many different types of guests on, and you have all these different brands to fulfill, media for. I guess my question is, does this feel brand new, or does this does 2021 and a new president feel like something you guys have been through before?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, yeah, we've been through this before. The difference is when Joe Biden helped pass the assault weapons ban back in 94, and he was one of the big architects of getting that to happen. The Democrats had been in power for 40 years in Congress. And that's the only way they got it passed was to agree to it to sunset in 10 years. And they really did assume, well, we'll still be in power, so we'll just pass it again. No big deal. Right. And the irony is passing the assault weapons ban is what made the Democrats lose Congress. And it actually flipped for the first time in 40 years. But that is the goal. I mean, he wants to double down. He wants to not just, because the problem is in our world, the assault weapons ban sounds like something that it's not. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be even worse this time. They've kind of learned their lessons. Like, number one, if we can get it going, we're not going to let it sunset. Number two, we're not limiting it to just what they would call ugly guns.
Right.
I mean, anything semi-automatic is out of here, gone, bad, bye. And they're going to, go for all of it. And that's the whole thing. It's funny to me, the arguments about what he will or won't do or what he wants to do or doesn't want to do with your guns. Oh, he doesn't want to take your guns. Have you read what he stated he wants to do?
Right.
Ban the online sale of guns and ammunition. Ban when they say ban the manufacture and possession of assault weapons, which can mean anything because it has no definition. So that means all the companies can't make them anymore, and you can't own them. Well, how does that work?
Right.
It's a magic stroke of the wand, executive order like we had with some other things in the past.
Yeah, that is such a huge question mark. And I think for people, like us and like a lot of our audiences that are in the industry in some way, whether you're a hunter or maybe you dabble in gunsmithing or you like doing AR builds or what have you, we have a certain amount of knowledge about different firearms platforms and what they're used for, what they're not used for, what the rules and regulations are for them. And then the general populace outside of that hears, like you said, assault weapons ban. Oh, that sounds great. Because when I think assault weapons, I think of mass shootings and I think of things that look like guns I see on video games and all this kind of stuff. But when you start peeling back those layers and you go, we're talking about all semi-automatics. I mean, that could be shotguns for some people. That could be 10/22, rifles. It could be, anything like that. Because again, you have people even like Joe Biden on a flub, a news interview a while back saying, semi-automatic means you pull and just rapid fire. It's like, no, come on, brother. Like
so along those lines, Dustin, along those lines. Now some of them like Joe Biden, whether he knows or doesn't know, he doesn't really care. He just knows he wants to ban them and get rid of them and infringe on your Second Amendment rights. But I would challenge anybody listening to this, probably if you're listening to this or you're watching it, you are probably one of the more knowledgeable gun people in your circle, right? Fair enough?
Right.
I would challenge you to go to any committee hearing at your state capitol on a gun thing and listen to, or you know what, save yourself the trouble. Go click online on all of these publicly recorded videos of these hearings, because I've done it. I've been to my state capitol numerous times and watched a panel of a dozen politicians debate a gun issue. They don't know anything about it. They know nothing about it. And they don't bother to say, well, I don't really know anything about that subject. Maybe we should bring in somebody. They just go, well, I have a really strong opinion about this thing I don't know. It'd be like me saying, an opinion about orthopedic surgery.
Right.
I know nothing about it, but I have a really strong opinion about what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. And I'll vote right now.
Right.
It's crazy.
The best thing that I could draw it to right now was when they had Zuckerberg and those Senate hearings about privacy and data collection and everything, long before the election, long before all that, they kind of coming off the whole, Russia dabbled in the 2016 election or whatever. And you had government officials asking him questions about, well, if I like something on Facebook and you sell, or then Yahoo gives me this thing, he's like, whoa, these are two different things. You're talking to people, and some people are like, well, how do you even make money? And he goes, sir, we sell advertisements. That's how we make our money. Like, how does your business even stay afloat if you don't charge your users to be on your platform? And so that's the type of thing where I think pretty much anybody in, Gen X on down could probably look at those hearings and go, oh, that's so silly. These politicians are so disconnected from everyday life and from this topic in general. And, poor Mark Zuckerberg has to sit up there and explain how the internet works to people. And to me, that's the same thing that we're seeing in the firearms industry. You're getting all these people who are so detached from it, that don't really bring in counsel. They're just kind of responding to whatever they think is going to be a winning platform. And that's where I think it starts to get, really, really sticky. And for me, I hope that shows like ours, shows like yours, are able to pull some of that back. And like you said, if you are the person in your inner circle who's probably gotten a bunch of phone calls and emails and text messages this year about, oh my gosh, now I do want to buy a gun. What do I do? That you need to be, part of who's helping educate these 6.5 million new gun owners that, could have maybe, hopefully, some kind of sway and what this gun legislation, could or would look like.
Yeah, and educate the politicians. And yes, for your buddy who said, man, I think I need to buy a gun, and what should I get? You're my friend who does gun stuff. And now in February or March or April, if they're talking about banning assault weapons, guess what? They are talking about your Glock 17. Yeah. They are talking about your Springfield Armory XDM. They are talking about your SIG P320. Yeah. And it doesn't, well, I wouldn't own one of those assault weapons. Guess what? You do. Yeah. You're one of us now. So welcome to the party.
Under this vague umbrella that's been created on this platform, pretty much everything but muzzle loaders is on the table for banning, at this point. And I think that's, where a lot of folks in the 2A community, we do get a little little skittish. Now, something that we've talked about a little bit before on previous episodes, we've had Sean Maloney, who's a defense attorney and does some work with the NRA, and he runs Second Call Defense, which is legal help for folks who do own firearms. And so he's very keen on the legislation. The thing that gets me, and I brought up to him the last time he was on, was this whole idea of executive orders coming into play for this. And the Biden-Harris platform was like, we're going to give Congress 100 days. We're going to start doing executive orders. Now, from the activism and things that you've been part of and the things that you've seen, I mean, do you think it could be as quick as one stroke of the pen and this could be coming down? Or do you think there's going to be, a little bit of a legal bout before any type of ruling comes down and it starts impacting, the everyday lives of gun owners?
Well, I guess we have to see. Yeah, stroke of the pen, law of the land. That's Rahm Emanuel, his quote. We'll have to see. We'll see if what happens in Georgia with the elections there, if we hold the majority in the Senate, and we've gained a little ground in the House, which can be helpful in preventing old Nancy Pelosi from getting as much done as she'd like to. But that's the problem. I mean, it's kind of like to sue someone, you have to have grounds, and to have grounds, sometimes you have to get arrested. Who wants to get arrested first? Right. And so the executive order thing, maybe there are lawsuits, but a lot of times it happens and people shrug and go, well, that sucks. And then they move on with their lives. So you kind of have to keep it from getting there as much as you can. And I guess, we all have a responsibility to shine the light on what's going on there and hold them accountable and be vocal. I feel like I'm still a little bit disappointed with how vocal our 90 million or so gun owners are. They say the NRA has plus or minus somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 million members, right? But if they had, what they could do if they had 20 million members? Pretty much anything. Yeah. They would have, I'm kind of, some of us are getting tired of pulling the wagon. We'd like more people to get out of the wagon and help us pull this wagon on Second Amendment stuff. Yeah, for sure. Well, one hypothetical that I'll throw at you that we've seen this year is obviously, the pandemic hits and we see a spike in gun sales. And then shortly followed is all the protests and civil unrest that happened through various protests, whether it be the things that were happening out in Seattle or, everything that followed the killing of George Floyd and on down the line. And it's, we're sitting here as a manufacturer and we're seeing sales go up and then we're like, okay, this will start to settle because of the pandemic. And then all of a sudden we see all these protests and all this civil unrest and so on. And one of the concerns before the election was that if Trump did get reelected, that we were going to see protests and riots like we hadn't even seen yet. And, I think it's kind of hard to wade through where all of these, legal standings are when it comes to the Trump administration, demanding recounts and the whole voter fraud situation and late ballots in Pennsylvania and all these different things. I mean, from where you sit and from all the news outlets that you see, do we think there's even a slim chance that there is some sort of crazy weird upset and Trump gets renamed president-elect? And if so, what could we be bracing for as far as the general populace responding to it? I just my guess. I don't have any inside information or anything that could support this, but my guess is Biden is going to be the next president. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of momentum going towards these recounts, or looking at the election and the ballots and all this stuff. If it did happen that all of a sudden, whoops, at the last minute, Trump is the winner. Yeah, I think there'd be some uprisings. But so far we've seen it around the country, and even when you go, wow, there's a lot of that going on, it's still very limited to some specific metro areas. Even in that metro area, it's like I was talking to a buddy in Portland, and we had one of our Gun Talk crew had to fly out to Portland for a media event last week, and kind of we're trying to get the intel. And he goes, really, the craziness is limited to a 4-block area in downtown.
Right.
And if you think about the big metro area that you live closest to and know best, I mean, a 4-block area in downtown Houston or Cincinnati or wherever, it's like, well, I can avoid that. I mean, I don't have to go in there. So it's kind of like, wow, there's riots and there's horrible and it's everywhere, except that it's not in 99% of the country.
Right. Yeah, I think that is a huge thing to take into consideration. I mean, you're exactly right. We are right outside a main metro area here in Cincinnati that, just like a lot of other cities, saw their fair share of protests and demonstrations and things like that. But, you know, the minute you go out to the suburbs, the minute you get outside of the outer belt, it is a totally different world. Now, I do think there have been some progressive suburbs, if you will, that were also kind of staging things and trying to be very, activist looking, but it wasn't near the kind of, oh my gosh, like if I go down there, I'm going to be fearing for my life. It wasn't that type of situation. But let me ask you this: with assuming Biden stays president-elect and he is takes his oath of office in Q1 of next year, I mean, what do you think are some real actionable ways that people like us in the media, or people like us who are firearms manufacturers, or even folks who are just, gun owners that want to stay legal gun owners, what do you think are some of the more simple steps that we can take to, like you said, shine the light on really what we're trying to defend?
I think it's being a vocal. Being vocal with your representatives who are in Washington for you. And politicians, they do a lot of different things, but one thing they can do is count. And if they are flooded with calls and emails of, hey, look, you represent me and I'm a Second Amendment supporter and I expect you to do these things, it can affect their behavior, whether they want to, stay in Washington and still stay being employed there or not.
Yeah. And
there are certain politicians that aren't going to listen to you. I mean, if you're in Southern California and your representative may go, I'm not worried about this guy.
Yeah.
But at the very least, the people who should be on our side, you got to make sure that they're not waffling, or or maybe they're like, well, I'm in favor of guns. I hunt pheasants every year.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. This isn't about that. And you can't agree to the idea that there's such thing as a bad gun. You can't even start down that road. It's like, well, we're only wanting the really bad ones. Well, there aren't. It's a metal object. There's no such thing as a bad gun.
Mm-hmm.
There are bad people doing bad things with legal products, perhaps, but that's not my problem. So I would say be super vocal, stay on them. And also, the first time they hear from you should not be you yelling in the phone at them.
Right.
First, you need to call, introduce yourself, get to know the staff there. If you call and Deborah answers the phone, it's like, hey, Deborah, I'm, Ryan from your district back home, and just wanted to say hello. And, here's a couple things that are important to me, and I'll be, staying in touch with you guys and make friends. This is a sales gig. and just put it on your calendar, on your Outlook, to remind yourself every 2 weeks to call Deborah and say hi.
Yeah.
And then when something comes up, then you can kind of go, hey, look, I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to the man or the lady in charge or whatever.
Right. And now is for you guys, is Gun Talk, is Texas home for you? Is that where you are?
No, we're actually in South Louisiana, just outside of
South Louisiana. Okay, you said Houston, and I was like, oh, that's not in my notes. But yeah. I mean, how have you seen maybe the demographic shift, for I still think there's a bit of a misnomer where people think that all southern states are just very much 2A active. And I feel like I have friends and family that live in the South, and especially in these last few years have really seen a shift in especially metropolitan areas, but overall in the South, where it's like, it's not so much like that anymore. You can't necessarily count on these places being like red states, if you will. Is that something similar that you guys are seeing back home, or do you feel like it's still holding pretty tight?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The big metro areas have always been, skewed Democratic, and that's not changing. That's just getting ever more. I think that it's kind of funny. I think both sides are digging in deeper on where they're at with things. And one of the biggest ones that's kind of crazy is Texas. Texas has been a bastion of Republican voters and conservative values, and damn it, Joe Rogan and all these people moving to Austin that are letting the word out that, hey, things are cool here. Taxes are lower and freedom is higher. Yeah. But it's like, Californian people, or it's not always California, but they move somewhere because they don't like the way California is and they try to make it California. Right. And so Texas is actually one that's kind of crazy. 4 years from now, it may not look the same when you look at the Electoral College.
Yeah, for sure. That is something, we have a family in Plano and some companies that have to do, things at like South by Southwest. And they're like, oh, this is like a weird little Southern Manhattan. Like it's, there's some things that are definitely changing and at a pretty, surprisingly, rapid rate. But when we're talking about like shining the light on things, one of the things that I was hoping that we would do as a 2A community when we started to get these phone calls from friends like, oh, now I all of a sudden do have a felt need to own a firearm, is that we were going to be welcoming as much as possible, that we are going to be able to bring these people in, not make them feel stupid, not make them feel dumb, because it's probably taken a lot of guts and courage if you were someone who was either gun agnostic or totally against it until now you have this felt need. And now you start asking questions and you're being bullied around a little bit. I don't know if you've seen that on the forums and things that you keep up with, but I can't help but see when we're dealing with social media and everything, not only for our brands, but looking at the blogs that people talk about us on and looking at these message boards and these different Facebook groups or whatever, where someone's new, they're just asking a question and you're getting a lot of, people that are coming out and sure, there are a lot who are saying, welcome, here are some great resources and things you could do. Here's some training facilities in your area. But there's also been a lot of, well, you weren't with us then, you shouldn't be with us now. And a lot of, kind of tribalism, that's going along with it. And I'm worried that maybe there's been enough of us that maybe we've missed the mark there and welcoming in these new gun owners to the fold. Would you say that would be kind of an accurate hypothesis from what you've seen as well?
Our audience of shooters and hunters, there are parts of our audience that definitely have been guilty of this for years, of not being welcoming. It's funny that you bring this up because I've had conversations over the last few days about just this. I mean, I was out hunting Sunday morning in a duck blind with my buddy who grew up in it and is hardcore, and he's got his son with him. And I took my daughter for the first time and on public land. And we were talking about how as hunters, people can be so protective of their land or where they go hunt and their spots. And so they don't want to take anybody with them. They want to introduce new people to it. They want to be secretive. It's a secret club. Well, guess what? You're going to lose. Yeah. You're going to lose ability to hunt. You're going to lose a voice, and it's the same thing with shooting. This morning we were talking about this, and one of the folks was talking with, he said, I went to this range and fairly new to pistol shooting and happened to have this little pocket pistol, which we know pocket pistols are not easy to shoot. And he's shooting and occasionally hitting the little 1x frame on holding the target up. And what does the range officer do? Does he come over and say, hey man, how's it going? You need any help with that? Or, those can be tricky. No, what does he do? He says, hey, stop shooting my wood frames.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're new to this, are you going to stick around? Are you going to go, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to go play golf.
Right.
I don't need this bullshit. So it's like, we as a community can be bad about this, and we got to snap out of it. We got to be more welcoming. And look, I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you've been shooting for 50 years or you're new to it. Hey, if you have a gun and you're interested and you want to dive in and learn more about it and perhaps become a 2A supporter, I'm all in. I don't care what color you are, what creed, what your favorite color is. Welcome in. Let's do it. Let's go shooting. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's something that's a huge deal. And because, we've talked to, for example, one of the friends of our show is Tony Simon with The Second Is For Everyone. And he does the diversity shoot, where he partners with 2A communities kind of all across the spectrum, whether it's the LGBTQ community that's into shooting sports, whether it's just people of color that are into the shooting sports, he himself, former Marine, but to talk to him, like, look at first glance, you're just like, this might just be the most jovial, happiest man I've ever met in my entire life. And I think he personifies it really, really well. You want to welcome people in and understanding that I don't have to agree with you about everything on the political spectrum. We don't need to agree about marriage rights. We don't need to agree about how protests should be happening. We don't need to agree about all these little other things, because what's on the chopping block right now is something that we have common ground on, and that is Second Amendment rights. And I think that there is a bit of a mental hurdle that goes into it, because I think a lot of folks, like you were saying, maybe the guys who have been, I've been shooting for 50 years. I never take people to my hunting grounds. It's very, the boys club kind of mentality to it, or fight club at that point, I suppose. But, that they, are so guarded with it that to them, kind of letting people who are different than them into that community, it's too much of an opposing mindset. And I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that, adulthood is being able to hold two conflicting, pieces of information in harmony in your brain at one time. And I think that that's kind of where we need to be, to understand, no, like, we don't need to have all of the same types of views on all of the world's problems, because right now our common ground is we want to make sure that we're able to protect ourselves, to hunt, to be able to own these firearms legally, and so on. I'm just very, very concerned that we may have missed a golden opportunity to welcome all these new folks into the community.
No, you're right. And, number one, it's about, don't be a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just beyond anything else, just don't act that way. Don't, act. But also, to me, it's about winning. Mm-hmm. Do you want to win or do you not when it comes to the Second Amendment? And if you're on my side, I don't care. Let's get on board. Exactly what you said, Dustin. I mean, it's like, I don't care what your background is. You're trying to get into this. And it's hard to argue for the most part, when people, these 6.5 million new gun owners, they're buying it for all the same reason. Mm-hmm. It's because they're concerned about their safety, their safety, their family's safety. And I mean, it's kind of, that's a universal thing that pretty much everyone can get on board with. And I don't understand why anyone would give anybody a hard time. Yeah. This is about winning. And if you don't get on board and everybody get on the same page and sing from the same song sheet, there are a lot of people that don't believe in the Second Amendment or your rights, and they want to take it away.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, comes back to felt need. When we shot our first episode of this show, and we were talking about, who is a gun owner, and looking at the data and taking common misconceptions or stereotypes. When you look at Gallup polls or any other reputable source for data on gun ownership and just guns in society, you see that there were a lot of people who they weren't against it, but they just didn't happen to be gun owners. And the reasons ranged from, anything from, oh, well, it was just never in my home, so I'm not really used to it, so I've never really had one, all the way to just felt need. I just never felt I felt like I was always in safe places. Never really crossed my mind. But what it showed was there were a lot of people who they were open to it. They just really, for lack of a better term, hadn't gotten around to it, to owning a gun or being part of it, whether that was because of felt need or finances or where they lived or what have you, the fear of jumping into a club that people would make fun of them in for asking questions, whatever that may be. And I think we've seen that now. We've seen that data actually play out because a lot of the people who were buying firearms this year for the first time were people from, kind of underrepresented communities for gun owners, people of color, women, people of various tax brackets. It was all over the place. I think we're really seeing that, that data actually flesh itself out for sure. But one thing I do want to ask you about before we start wrapping up is something I didn't see getting into firearms media was being pro-police was kind of a divisive thing, which is something I was not anticipating. We have things like our Guardian Purchase program here where military, law enforcement, first responders, they get special pricing and perks and stuff all year long as a way to say thank you to them. And something I did not expect to see this year was, sometimes we'll get negative feedback from people saying that, oh, police enforce tyrannous gun laws, and colorful language, about the police. And I think yoked up with this whole idea of the defund the police movement, which I'm really concerned is going to get some new steam with Biden Harris. I'll just say, I don't even know if this is a question. This is just something I'm concerned about. I think this is something that most of the people in the 2A community, would be, concerned about. With Gun Talk being in this media landscape for so long, I mean, do you feel that not just regular public perception of law enforcement has changed, but it's also changed in the 2A community overall, whether that be in the same vein of defund the police or if it's just, shall not be infringed, they enforce tyrannical gun laws, kind of where do you think that line has been shifting about for the last, decades that you guys have been around?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think that in general, our community of shooters, hunters, gun owners are fairly, they're pro law enforcement. They're certainly pro law and order, right? There are those cases of we were just following orders kind of stuff. You have, Ruby Ridge and Waco and these different things that have come up over the years that people haven't forgotten about. And they go, I lived through Hurricane Katrina. I lived in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina came through, and the police were just following orders and kicking in doors and knocking over elderly women when they said, no, I'm okay. I don't need to go anywhere. I have my revolver here. Yeah. And they're, tackling them to the ground to apprehend the gun. Yeah. And it's like, I get it, but we also know that the majority of law enforcement do a great job. The stuff that we see recently in the media, some of it's been maybe, there have been some bad shoots. There's also been some actually totally valid shoots that the media and the public know nothing about what the law enforcement has been trained to do and the proper protocol. And a lot of them, they were following proper protocol. But we don't wait for, an investigation and a trial and see what happens. We just start rioting on day one. Right. And of course, when there is an investigation and a trial and an officer is found to have done the correct thing, there's no apology from the media going, oh, sorry about all that, public stuff we put out there about you and caused this whole uproar. So I don't know. I don't know how it's changed over the years. I think it's, we totally support you, but don't mess with us.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. And I guess I just asked that because they seem to be running some parallel paths. And I think the people who are saying, yay assault weapons ban and yay defund the police, it all goes down to lethal force, and lethal force is tied into firearms directly for most folks, in their minds. And that's where I just have a concern that those lines are running just too close together, that they're getting blurred. And that's a personal concern of mine. I have friends and family who are police officers, and the minute I see them having to not wear their riot gear because the public has said it makes them nervous, that's the sort of stuff that starts getting my juices flowing, because I'm thinking of my friends and family that are out there trying to protect folks that are.
I would really like to, and I don't know if it would help or not. Maybe I'm just a Pollyanna about this, but it feels like they talk about, well, the police need more training. And of course, they don't know how much training the police have. They just want them to have more of it. But we also are going to pull funds from them.
Yes.
We want them to do more training.
Right.
But I really wish there were maybe more opportunities to train the public about what you should and should not do in interactions with the police.
Right.
And I get it. There's abuse of power that happens probably, every day or weekly around the country. And it's a really difficult job. But what do you expect to happen?
Right.
If you go, hey, do you think literally fighting the police or trying to grab their gun what's the outcome going to be here?
Right.
Versus, okay, this is wrong. I'm going to have to go to court about this, which also sucks. But I just don't understand the logic in, why isn't anyone going, well, that was really stupid.
Right.
You shouldn't point guns at police. What do you expect the reaction will be? Yeah.
Well, and like you said, it's protest and media stance on day one. As soon as the cell phone clip gets sent to an outlet, it's already there. And the problem becomes, it's no longer tell someone the truth. It's debunk what they first saw. You have to, when the truth does come out, if it ever does on general media, you're not just reporting the news anymore. You now have to backpedal and recalibrate the entire situation. And I think that is probably one of the more scary things, because like you said, nobody's coming out and making public apologies. Nobody's coming out or redacting, news articles, when certain police officers or in certain situations, all the facts do come out later. And also going, to bring this full circle with the election, and like we were talking about with, having some play in the House and having some play in the Senate, I had some people ask me, they were like, why do you think that Biden was up over Trump in all these elections, but we still had so many, House and Senate seats that were going Republican? And I said, well, my personal thought is a lot of people get that ballot and just vote president, vice president, and they don't fill out the rest of the ballot. They're not voting for their, local and state the same way that they are for president, vice president. And with the whole policing thing, I think people forget you have more of a voice in how the police in your community operate than you think. You elect the sheriff. You elect the mayor. So, if you elect the sheriff, all the deputies, all the folks in the sheriff's office, they're all under them. And if you elect the mayor and you elect city council, and well, those are the people that the city police report to. And then if you're in places like, like we have big colleges here that have their own police departments, well, we sign off on the things saying, yes, they're allowed to have their own police department. We do have a very strong voice in it, but we don't exercise it with the education and willpower that we should. It's just every 4 years when the election comes up for the president, we put all of our eggs in that basket and go, hey, federal government, I want you to do my will and let it trickle down. There's when people are talking about defunding the police and having to retrain police, I'm like, okay, well, where's that at? Is that the constable in the small town? Is that your sheriff? Is that your city police? Is that your Bureau of Criminal Investigation? Don't forget you have those guys. There's more than just the city police that you see out on the beat. I think we really do. We have a voice there. It's just people have not been educated to the fact that, hey, your vote does matter for that. If you're upset about the police in your community, your city, your county, you need to vote, accordingly.
Well, and that is also true for gun rights and gun laws. You can get a lot done at the local and state level. I think we think about these, we were talking about a bunch about what might Biden do. Well, there's a lot of stuff at the local and state level that you can accomplish and either roll back stuff that's really infringing on your 2A rights, or keep it from, going there. And, support your state group. That's really important. And again, in the last year and a half or so, there's been a lot of turmoil with the NRA and people, and I get it. But I just don't want people to not support anything. Like, well, right. I'm not going to give any dollars to the NRA. Well, that's fine. You don't have to, but support your state groups, please, first and foremost, because they don't have the type of funding that other groups have, but they can actually get a lot done. And show up to your state capitol, show up to the town council meetings, show up to your county commissioner or whatever, make yourself known. And also maybe look for a different group, like a Second Amendment Foundation, or there's some guys doing some, legal battles in a lot of places that set precedent. Now, guess what? We've got the Supreme Court now, so we can actually maybe even make a little bit more headway.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate your time and running down the rabbit hole with me here. It's all these things that start piling up in a situation like we're living in right now, with election results and pending legislation and all the things that have happened under the umbrella of the pandemic. So it's great to get your insights. But if people want to learn more about Gun Talk and all the different shows and things you have, where are the best places that they could go to figure out more about you?
So guntalk.com is a good place to start. We also have, obviously, channels on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. We have a big video site called Gun Talk TV, 2,000 plus videos that are all free. And also the Gun Dealio app. It's a free smartphone app for Androids and iOS. Guns and Gear is one of our TV shows that airs on Sportsman Channel and also online. First Person Defender is another show we do. So, anywhere you can, and then of course podcasts. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find Gun Talk Radio and all the different Gun Talk Nation, Gun Talk Hunt. Just look for Gun Talk.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely make sure that all those links are in our show notes this week. You'll be able to find that at faxonfirearms.com/blog. Click on episode 42 for all of the links and notes and all the stuff to get you to the right place for Gun Talk. So again, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I think it goes without saying that pretty much every gun owner has their favorite tools, their favorite things that they like to keep in their range bag or at their workbench. And it's no secret for us that the Wheeler Fat Wrench is one of those. We have several of these up in our assembly area with our armory technicians. And it's because it's a simple, great device that can be used in multiple applications. It's an adjustable torque wrench in a screwdriver type fashion with a series of bits that'll help you with everything from rifle takedown to scope mounting and everything in between. Fantastic tool. So if you haven't checked these out, you could go to wheelertools.com, and they're available in a ton of places, including amazon.com. But make sure you check it out, especially if you're looking for that one missing piece for your workbench, or you want to give it to a new gun owner to help set up their range bag. Definitely a great choice. Again, check out our friends at wheelertools.com and take a look at the Fat Wrench. All right, well, we have another special guest filling in for Jay this week. The lovely Britt Faxon is on the show with us. Thank you for joining us again.
Dustin, thanks for having me on here. I don't mean to, but what in the world is this? Come on now.
Jay's custom board?
Where's mine?
We could get one. Amazon has wonderful things. That's where I got that bad boy. The smooth $20 could get you a custom board.
Spoiled.
He was giving me grief because like we would like lay out pieces of paper for him to put his candies and junk on. He goes, we need
cutting boards.
We need something.
We need
He wanted like a plate. Yes.
Cutting boards.
Yes. You got a personalized
This looks like more like
it looks like a
paddle from those
like a
of
sorority
us.
or a fraternity paddle. That's what it looks like for me.
Are you kidding
Did you ever
me?
see this?
It looks like the stuff that our parents spanked us with in the 70s.
My personal favorite was like the bouncy ball racket things. When those would break, my mom would just stack those up in the cabinet, and those were the
Oh my God.
that's what was used there. But we don't have time to unpack all of that. So we'll move on.
All right, let's do it.
Before we get too deep down the rabbit hole, this week's segment is brought to you by our friends at Crimson Trace. We're going to be giving away one of the CMR 204s, the Rail Master Pro Light and Laser. If you'd like to enter for that, all you got to do is visit faxonfirearms.com/blog and click on episode 42. 42 episodes, Britt.
42. Way to go.
42. It's coming to the end of the first year. So this week we are actually going to be showing a segment that we filmed a little while back getting ready for Thanksgiving. And so you were nice enough to open up your home to us. We made some geta with some products from meatyourmaker.com. And we also dove into a family recipe of chess pie.
Right on.
You want to just tell the folks a little bit about why that is a staple at the Faxon Thanksgiving table?
Well, because there would be a mutiny if people showed up for Thanksgiving and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a favorite. You know, not everybody likes nuts in their food. They can get a little picky about that.
Yeah.
And so it's just the best of pecan pie without the pecans.
And this was a recipe that was Bob and Barry's mom's, right? That
Betty Faxon.
Yeah.
Yes, this was her recipe. She would share this in the PTA cookbooks. And like I said, my stepmom called me one day at work and said, you have to make this. Bobby and I were newly married. And she gave me the recipe out of the PTA cookbook because we all through the years went to the same elementary school here in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
My stepmom had this cookbook, and so she shared the recipe. And like I said, that better be at Thanksgiving where people are going to be angry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, something that Bob reiterates pretty consistently, which I love, is that, you know, that he believes in the fellowship of firearms, and I believe there's definitely fellowship with food. And so those two things run pretty simpatico, especially this time of year. So before we go any further, we're going to cut now to a little teaser of our Thanksgiving special, which will be out on YouTube and all of your favorite social platforms next week. But here is how to make the Faxon family chess pie with Britt and Jay Wilson.
All right, so today I'm going to teach Jay how to make chess pie. Chess pie is a recipe that's been around in the Faxon family for a long time. I was lucky enough to get a phone call one day from my stepmom, who was working on the PTA at Cheviot School in Cincinnati, Ohio. She goes, hey, tonight, surprise Bobby. I found one of your mother-in-law's recipes in the PTA cookbook. You got to make this today before he gets home. I'm like, all right, give it to me. So it's the chess pie recipe. Let me show you something, though. She called me at work. And just to let you know how long ago it was at work, it was in the days where we still used these little pink notifications telling us that we had a message.
Important message.
And here it is. This is Betty Faxon's chess pie recipe from the PTA cookbook from Cheviot School. Jay, are you ready?
Yeah,
I'm
let's
do it.
Excited.
Okay.
I'm not much of a baker, so I'm pretty
Jay,
excited.
this is not
this.
like chemistry baking.
Yeah.
This is like easy baking.
Nice.
Right, we're not going to use the easy bake oven, but easy baking.
Yeah, right.
Okay, let's start. Let's go with 1 cup of brown sugar.
All right.
I always dump it in. I always end up with a combination of light and brown in the container, so it doesn't really matter.
Cool.
Let's go with a half a cup of white sugar.
All right. All right. Very nice. Very nice.
And then, I'm losing my way here. We're going with 1 tablespoon of flour.
1 tablespoon of flour.
Yes, sir.
All right.
2 eggs.
2 eggs. Gotcha.
2 tablespoons of milk.
All right. 2 tablespoons milk.
1 teaspoon of vanilla. Or, Jay, you know what? Let's pretend like this is cooking.
I'll eyeball it.
Yeah, you eyeball it.
Good.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. And then we're going to, that is a half a cup of melted butter in here.
I like that.
All right.
Anything that starts with a half a cup of
Is your thing?
melted butter.
My thing too.
Totally on board.
All right.
Totally on board. All right. How's this contraption work?
We're going to put up the bowl.
Okay.
And we just want to mix it until it's light and frothy.
Light and frothy.
The color's going to change. It's going to get a lighter brown.
Yeah.
Grab that pie crust that you made earlier in the day.
Yeah, right. Totally made this earlier in the day. Definitely made.
I think we might have to give the, hold on a second, don't put that in there now,
yeah.
Jay, or that thing is hitting the ceiling.
Right.
See how the color's changing?
Yeah, right.
Right? Let's get some of that. There wasn't much flour in there, so let's make sure we get it all in.
Right.
I feel like it's important for leavening or something.
Something, whatever it is.
Yeah, those
does.
people who bake, they understand what flour does.
Yeah, right. Right.
It holds things together, leavens, I don't know.
We were talking about this earlier. Bakers are sort of like scientists,
They are.
and cookers are an entirely different thing.
Yep. Up you
All
go.
right, up I go.
Let's give it a few more. And we just want it to all be incorporated.
Yeah.
I feel like it's there. Lower the bowl. I'll take this off for you.
All right.
Jay, do you want the
I'm all right.
You're all right? Okay. All right. Oh. Yep, into the pie crust.
Pie crust?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sort of pour in.
Yes, sir. And this is not a deep dish pie crust. It's just the regular pie crust. Good job, Jay. You are a baker.
Right.
Oh, we had some lumps.
Yeah, some brown sugar.
Thanks for not getting the lumps in there.
Right, I figured I was only supposed to put the...
Yeah, right.
Right.
I don't know. It could be like a little bonus if you got that in your piece of pie, right?
Maybe it could, yeah, like those weird Easter cakes where they hide...
No, that's a king cake where they
Yeah,
hide the
king
baby.
cake.
Easter.
That's it.
It's
That's
not
what it is.
Easter
Not
yet.
Easter.
You were preparing for Easter at that
right,
point.
Right, the king cake.
All right. So some people maybe would put a little bit of aluminum foil on there to keep the crust from browning too much. I happen to like the crust
It's
kind
a
of
sucker move.
well done.
That's totally a sucker move.
So we're gonna go
Well done
straight. We're
crust.
gonna go straight into the oven with
All right.
this.
Yeah. Cool. Right there.
Yep.
What we got? 375?
We've got 375 for about 42 minutes.
42 minutes.
42 minutes.
All right, I know.
You know, it's got to be a little bit precise.
Baking's a science, right? 42 minutes.
You got it. All right. Ready to make whipped cream?
Yeah.
Gotta have it.
Absolutely.
2 cups of heavy whipping cream.
Cups. This is 4 cups, right?
Yeah.
Half.
That looks good.
2 cups heavy whipping cream.
Turn it up.
Turn it up.
Turn the bowl up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Turn it on high. And let's just watch it.
All right.
We don't want butter. We want
Right.
whipped cream.
Right, absolutely.
What happens when we over whip?
Butter.
Butter,
Yeah.
which is delicious.
Yeah, right. I mean,
But we want whipped cream.
it's not that bad of a mistake, I guess.
No. Once it starts to probably get about halfway, we'll go with maybe 2 tablespoons and then test it. And instead of doing vanilla, we're gonna do bourbon.
Nice. Good
Nice.
move.
I think we're ready.
All right. 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, I think, don't you? We don't want it to be too sweet.
Yeah, right.
Powdered sugar,
tablespoons,
not
powdered
regular
sugar.
sugar. I think it's just smoother.
Okay.
Right.
Nice.
Darn close.
Yeah, it's starting to look really good.
You like it a little looser or firm with cream?
I think I like a little firmer.
All right. Whatever you think.
How much? What's the general amount? I don't know much about.
Why don't we try a
whipped cream.
tablespoon?
Tablespoon. Is that like a part of a shot?
Just pour.
Tablespoon. Plus a little.
Yeah, plus a little more. There you go.
Couple of
Let's try it.
tablespoons.
Right.
Take that around.
Smells great.
Oh
I think we're there.
yeah. Nice.
Test it.
Test it. Okay. I can do that.
Delicious. All right. Next,
Yeah, we're there.
let's get that pie out of the oven.
Excellent.
Serve up a piece.
Excellent.
All right.
There we go.
Nice job, Jay.
Yeah, very good. What size pieces do we want?
That's perfect.
I do like the brown crust. Yeah, I think that's really the way to go.
Who wants anemic crust? Nobody.
All right.
All right. Serve us up. Very pretty. Nice job.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Nice.
Can't wait to taste it.
This looks incredible.
Right on. Nice job.
That's great.
Spot on.
That's great. Love the bourbon whipped cream with it.
Very nice. Good job, Jay.
Thank you, Brett.
For those of you who have been watching the podcast for a while, you may know that we had Ryan Donahue from Crimson Trace on for one of our episodes to talk all things optics and red dots and some of the exciting things that CT has coming up. But I just wanted to share one of my personal favorite products of theirs, and that is their Railmaster Pro, the CMR 204. So not only is it a tactical light, it's also a laser, and it has all of the industry-proven technology that Crimson Trace has been known for so many years. But they're not just limited to things like lights and lasers. They've made a big splash in the electro-optics game, whether it's looking at something like a traditional rifle scope, or maybe even their new battle optic, which you may or may not have seen in some TV shows and movies recently. They have a lot to offer. So obviously you're going to be seeing some more stuff of Crimson Trace popping up with us here at Faxon Firearms. You may have even seen it staged on our limited edition Mustang rifle that came out in the spring of 2020. Again, lots of cool stuff from them, just like the CMR 204 or anything in their Railmaster series. We would encourage you to check them out at crimsontrace.com. Thanks again for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As always, we would love for you to spread the word about the show and look for us on your favorite podcasting and video apps. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You can find links to all of those outlets at faxonfirearms.com/blog. Don't forget, if you're interested in signing up for the Sportsman Giveaway, there's only a few days left. You get not only the custom 350 Legend rifle from us here at Faxon, you also get a Thompson Center muzzleloader, great prizes from Scentlock, Rocky Boots, Crimson Trace, Hornady Ammo, Bison Coolers, Primary Arms Optics, and a whole lot more. Visit FaxonFirearms.com for all of the ways to enter. And while you're entering contests, don't forget to visit FaxonFirearms.com/blog. Click on episode 42 for all of the ways to enter for the CMR 204. Don't forget that next week we will be having our Thanksgiving special. We're going to be showing you how to smoke a turkey with the Camp Chef Woodwind. We're also going to be looking at making homemade Cincinnati Geta with Jay and Britt using products from our friends at meetyourmaker.com, as well as chess pie like you saw today. So don't forget to subscribe on your favorite apps so you can see that Thanksgiving special as well. Don't forget, if you would like to reach out to us, you have a question, a guest suggestion, a topic you'd like us to discuss, feel free to email us at podcast@faxonfirearms.com. We would love to hear from you and get some of those on the air. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. We want to extend our deepest gratitude to military, police, first responders, and more by saying thank you with special pricing and discounts on all Faxon products. Here's how you get started. First, you'll head on over to our website, FaxonFirearms.com. From there, you'll want to click Support and Guardian Purchase Program in the drop-down. Then you'll see the instructions on how to get started, so let's just walk through those. First, you'll want to register for an account on our website. If you've already bought something from us on our website before, then this part's already taken care of. Second, you'll want to send a copy of your credentials or some reasonable verification of affiliation to customer service at FaxonFirearms.com. We get a lot of emails where people are like, hey, will this count? Will this ID count? Will this VA card count? Chances are, yes, a lot of them will count, but make sure you attach an image or a copy of that verification to the email before you even ask customer service. That way they can expedite the process for you. As soon as the account has been created or updated, we will send you an email letting you know that you're ready to go. The discount will be available anytime online when you go to your shopping cart. If you have any more questions, please email customer service at FaxonFirearms.com.